In today's show, we're live here on YouTube answering your questions, and I'm talking to the winner of the Locked On Fantasy Basketball Bowl. We're going to talk about his secrets in that and whatever else you guys have got for us. Michael Bolton.
Thanks, Josh. It's Michael Bolton here, and it's time for another episode of the Locked On Fantasy Basketball Podcast. Let's get to it.
Let's get to it, indeed.
You are Locked On Fantasy Basketball, your daily fantasy basketball podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network.
Hello and welcome to the Locked On Fantasy Basketball Podcast, brought to you by Basketball Monster. My name is Josh Lloyd and I am the lead fantasy analyst at basketballmonster.com. And you can find me on Twitter, as always, at redrock_bball, on TikTok at redrock_bball, and on Instagram at Locked On Fantasy Basketball. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel Sportsbook, official sportsbook of Locked On. Make every moment more. Visit fanduel.com/lockedon today to get started. And thank you for making Locked On Fantasy Basketball your first listen every day. We are free and available on all platforms. So we're going to bring a first-time guest on today. He runs a fantasy site himself over in Israel. He is the winner of the Locked On Fantasy Basketball Bowl Category League, which was the 360-team category tournament, and in the grand final where every team had to go up against 59 other opponents, all head-to-head matchups against those opponents. He went a crazy 59-0, beat every single team in the final, the clear, deserved winner of the Locked On Fantasy Basketball Bowl, and the creator, I guess, of DaytoDay Fantasy. It is Arik Zilber. Arik, welcome to the show.
Hi, nice to be here, Josh.
It's good to have you here. First of all, before we get into answering questions from people, just tell people about what you do, what DaytoDay Fantasy is, and what sort of things that you guys are providing.
Okay, so we're two. I have a partner, Hovav his name, and we have a podcast, but it's in Hebrew, so it's only for Israelis for now. Maybe later we'll do it in English. And other than that, we have a fantasy app that we started this year. We give the recommendation of pickups, and there are our rankings and the pre-draft rankings and things like that. And we're going to upgrade it this year, so we're very excited about it.
So it's awesome that Arik not only is creating content, but was able to join into the Locked On Fantasy Basketball Bowl. And I tried to get as many analysts into that contest as possible, and he ends up winning. So you're winning that contest, 360 teams in there. Was there any particular strategy that you think paid off well for you, especially going the 59-0 in the final week?
Yes, of course. I thought a lot about how I'm going to draft and what I want to do, and I thought about a lot of things. First of all, this league is very special because you don't have there only 11 other teams. You have 30 other leagues, so you need to distinguish your team. Okay, if I'm going to punt some categories, there's a big chance that in the finals I'm going to meet teams that punted the same categories as me.
Yep.
So I decided a few things. First of all, the only punt I'm doing is a soft punt assists. Why? Because I don't want to lose value in the draft, and people tend to pick assists prematurely. Okay.
That's true.
Second, so I want to maximize my value because I'm going against 59 other teams if I'm getting to the finals. Okay, so it's very important. Second of all, I have to pick JJJ, Jaren Jackson, and Robert Williams. I have to do it, okay, because both of them supposed to be ready for the finals. Okay, and if I get them, I'll get them at the late round. So here again, the value gaining. I'm gaining value again. Third thing I said to myself, this kind of league. It's special because you have the game limit. Okay, so if you have game limit, turnovers becomes a category that that is easy to win. Okay, if you playing and you don't have game limit, you can have a good turnover team. But if you're playing 10 games more, it doesn't matter. So I decided that it's easy category. I want to win it, and that's how I can pick players like Al Horford, that his value is, is a 7th rounder, 6th rounder. I can take him at round 10, and for me, it will be a good pick, a logical pick, because I don't want to punt turnovers. So what I want to do is to take a lot of points, to pick a lot of points and percentages in the first rounds, free throws and field goals. And in the later rounds, I can pick some players that gain a lot of value from turnovers. So this is how I started to draft. And the other things, I had a lot of luck. Yes, I drafted DeRozan 4th round, and he was first in that week per game. But Butler, for example, I picked in the 2nd round, and I know that everybody is very cold on him because of the games. And
that's the thing. You get luck sometimes, because like someone like Jimmy Butler's missed hardly any games really over the second half of the season, and that's part of it. Like you can't judge it, and that's one of the things I talk about all the time, Arik, is that like that's great about Butler. Like, just because he's missed games in the past, and we have risks associated, it doesn't mean that he's going to miss a ton this time, and it doesn't mean that he's going to miss them at the most crucial part of the season, which, again, he didn't. But, if he played this week, he missed a game this week on a back-to-back. It's really hard to be able to project that sort of stuff out.
Like 25 straight games. It's crazy.
Yeah, exactly.
It's crazy.
Yeah, it's like it's like drafting Kristaps Porzingis. Like, all right, cool, the bloke's never going to play. Well, he's going to hit 70 games and outpace nearly everybody in terms of games played this season, because, shockingly enough, you cannot predict when someone is going to get injured. Now, we did have some big news come in the last hour or so, and this is important because Hawkish asked them the questions. When's the next we'll receive info on Tyrese Haliburton and Myles Turner? I can afford to hold for one more day, but I'm not sure after that. Now, if you haven't seen it, the news is, and this is as good as telling you that it's done, Rick Carlisle saying, there's a good chance that Haliburton won't play again this season. That means they're done. That means they're not coming back. He doesn't come out and say that. It already was looking that way anyway, Arik, when they're sitting on non-back-to-backs and they've got every incentive to try and keep pace with Portland and try and overtake Orlando in the lottery odds situation. When they're sitting out games for no particular reason, they're not coming back. And then he comes out and says that they are not coming back. You can wait here, Hawkish, when we'll receive info. We'll receive info every day. Oh, he happens to be out today. He happens to be out today. You might get a definitive answer next Tuesday, but you don't want to wait till then. This is it. This is done. It's obviously not 100% because Carlisle, for some reason, left the door open to say, maybe. But that's it, Arik. They're done, I think. I think you move on pretty clearly.
The maybe is nothing.
Yeah, it is. It's all just posturing between, like, just saying, so the NBA doesn't go, why are you sitting there? These guys, well, maybe this keeps them out. Like, it's done. The coaches wouldn't come out and say that. And again, when you look at everything tied in together, the random Buddy Hield sit, the just games rested back to back, this position in the standings, there is nothing here to suggest to me that there is any chance that Myles Turner or that Haliburton plays again this season. They could, but I don't think there's any chance of that at this point. All right, let's have a look at some other stuff. Okay, so let's go to some stuff about the Clippers. Michael Liu says Norman Powell and Robert Covington. Robert Covington was obviously awesome in yesterday's game. Arik, Norman Powell was all right coming back. Threes and steals on the back-to-back. They've got a back-to-back coming up on Friday, Saturday, their back-to-back is. And we're expecting the Kawhi sits one of those games. Paul George will be out. Marcus Morris will be out. Now, I find it... Robert Covington was great, Arik, yesterday, no doubt, but 90% shooting, 31 minutes while Batum played 19. It's really hard for me to feel trust in that. I would also look at this, Arik, with these Clippers guys. It's great they're on a back-to-back, but are you actually going to start him on Friday? I don't think you treat this as a back-to-back because is Norman Powell in your best 10 players on Friday? Is Covington, if you're getting him off the waiver wire? I'd say almost definitely not. So you're just streaming them in for the one day on Saturday would be my guess.
I think if you only need the steals, Covington is a great option, more than for a stream. But yes, you're correct. The 90% is ludicrous. He's not going to shoot that well.
There's no way he's going to do that. It's not much like Batum wasn't going to shoot 80% the game before that. There's Brian saying here that the Pacers announced that Haliburton may play if he needs to hit statistical category awards. He needs to play 2 more games and he's 0.2 assists behind Harden. Would you hold on to him? Did the Pacers actually announce that? I don't know. I don't think the Pacers actually did say that. Well, I can see this comment here from the guy who broke the original tweet, Dustin Doperak. He's replying to someone says, sure, if one of them had statistical markers they wanted to hit, he wouldn't stand in the way. But I think if Haliburton were leading the league in assists, he'd play a couple more games just to get the qualifying number of games. But you don't win anything if you lead the league in assists. There's no trophy. There's no anything like that that you get to win to win that award. So I don't. The Pacers didn't come out and say that. I don't think Rick Carlisle came out and said that. Unless I'm wrong on that, Brian. I don't see Carlisle saying that Haliburton may play to hit these category numbers. There is still a chance, of course, and it's always a risk to go and drop players that are as good as this, but it's not feeling particularly likely that we get something good happening in that direction. Guys, before we get into the next question, today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. The tournament is heating up, and there's no better place to get in on the action than FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook, because right now FanDuel is giving new customers a no-sweat first bet up to $1,000. That's $1,000 back in bonus bets if your first bet doesn't win. Just go to FanDuel.com/lockedon to sign up today to claim your no-sweat first bet, and you can wager on everything from the money line to point spreads to which team will be cutting down the net, all on an app that's safe, secure, and super easy to use. UConn's still favorite in the men's tournament, and South Carolina are going to be one of the biggest favorites ever in the women's tournament. I believe they're undefeated through the entire season. They're minus 290 over on FanDuel, while UConn sits at minus 125 to win the NCAA tournament. Don't miss your shot at a no-sweat first bet, up to $1,000 when you join FanDuel today. Just go to FanDuel.com/lockedon to sign up. Make every moment more with FanDuel, and don't forget to gamble responsibly. Let's get back into some questions here, because there's one that came in from Aaron about Larry Nance. Larry Nance got a big minutes bump yesterday, up to 25. Should we expect his minutes? What should we expect his minutes to be the next couple of games? Now, Arik, I would look at that from Larry, and he'd been hovering in the 13, 14-minute zone. It was really, really strange how low it was and how much they were pumping into Valanciunas. But we have seen this years and years and years, that center rotations against the Warriors don't really tell us anything, because that's how weird they are with either they were Looney, Kuminga, Draymond playing at center. They attack Valanciunas. Him trying to match up with Steph was a disaster. And I think that is almost a single matchup problem, where the Warriors knew how to exploit him versus, we're going to be going 25 Nance, 20 Valanciunas, which is what we were seeing earlier in the season when Zion was present. It's possible, but I think this is more that the fact that the Warriors exploited JV so much meant Nance played more minutes. Yeah,
and Valanciunas plays at a really high level now, so it's easier to think that he's going to play a lot.
It's not guaranteed, because 2 weeks ago against the Lakers, he played 16 minutes. And then he went 34, 33, 28, 34, 32, 30. And then played 22 against the Warriors. Now, they play the Nuggets and the Clippers. The Nuggets against Jokic, I think he's going to have an okay role there. He's big enough size-wise to hold in terms of strength. And they play the Clippers, and they play the Kings and the Grizzlies. There's no one there that I look at. Or maybe the Clippers and small ball, but I think that Nance, if you expect 20 from Nance, I think you'd be going okay. But even that, his minutes, 11, 13, 12, 15, 12, 14, the games prior to that. It's really hard for me to look at him as a 25-minute-a-night player as we move forward. But I think that was more specific to the Warriors. Is Julius Randle a drop, or do you hold until tomorrow? Randle suffered a pretty serious ankle injury in that game yesterday, but unfortunately we just don't have an update at this point. And the problem we have here, Arik, is that we might not get one today. And if you wait to drop Randall tomorrow, then you are in a situation where that roster spot doesn't have as much value. Because if you drop him today, you can play someone Thursday with 2 games on. You can play someone Saturday with 2 games on. If you wait until tomorrow, all you really get to do is you lose the potential of using Randall on, say, Sunday, and you just get someone on Saturday. So I think if you're going to make the call, you got to bite the bullet and do it now, because waiting until tomorrow basically takes away that advantage. What do you think? What's your outlook on Randall?
I think we're talking about head-to-head, right? That's most of people playing, because if you're a Roto player...
Roto, of course, you hold.
I agree with you. You don't have any reason to wait. And I think after seeing his injury, I pretty much believe that he's going to miss the next couple of games. So it's a good idea to drop him now.
Yeah, I think so too. Look, obviously there's a risk with all of this stuff that he comes back, he plays Friday, Sunday, he gives you top 20 numbers, and you go, bloody hell, why did I drop him? But with all the available evidence plus the risk reward of waiting, I think it leans towards moving on. Especially, again, this is all everything about fantasy and all these decisions we make, it's very hard to give specific advice because it's all depending on your situation. Like, what's your matchup look like? Are you just cruising? Are you winning very easily here and it doesn't actually matter that you need to desperately scrounge for 2 extra games? Because if you're looking good, or as you said, if you're in a roto league, then I don't know, you can hold on. But it is very, very specific in that situation. Wiz asks, should we bother holding any Spurs players? We know that they've been in weird mode for months now, Arik. They play Friday, Sunday, the 2 13-game days. They sat our Keldon Johnson, Devin Vassell, Jeremy Sohan, and one other player that is just not in my mind at the moment. Someone else that was solid. Anyway, it doesn't matter who it was. Vassell, Johnson, Sohan, they're the 3 guys that were out. And they play Friday, Sunday. And I would be very surprised if we get those guys play the 2 games remaining this week, and the same with Zach Collins and the same with Trey Jones. So given that they're on high volume days, given that we can't really project them to play both of those games, do you think there's anyone that's worth holding on to?
If you're really desperate for assists and steals, so maybe Trey Jones, but the chance that someone there is going to play both of the games is very, very low.
The way that I look at it, right, is I am very, very confident that they want Mamukelashvili, they want Blake Wesley, Malachi Branham, and to a lesser degree, say Julian Champagne, to play every game here down the stretch. And in order for that to happen, there needs to be 2 to 3 guys that sit out every single game, because they've got like 13 guys that they're trying to get minutes into. And for Wesley and Branham and these younger players and guys they're sort of experimenting with to play, like if you look at their rotation, you can find, like I've got like 10 or 11 guys here that don't include Wesley or Champagne. It's Mamukelashvili, Bates Diop, Branham, Graham, Vassell, Johnson, Collins, Jones, Sohan, McDermott. And that doesn't even include Langford, it doesn't include Wesley, it doesn't include Champagne. So to get those guys minutes, other players need to sit down. And we saw a bunch of them sit last game. I think Sohan might actually be done. I don't know about that. He looks like he actually has a problem with his knee. I think Zach Collins is going to sit one of these games coming up. But we just don't know. And that's what, again, if you don't make the move now and you wait to drop them if they're ruled out Friday, you don't actually gain a huge benefit by trying to stream someone in on Saturday. Gil, how do I feel about teams like Utah and Indiana trying to tank after seemingly trying through the entire season before now? Well, get to you in a second on this, Arik, but I don't. How else would you prefer them to do it? Right? They're not making the play-in tournament. Their goal, we thought at the start of the season, is these teams are going to be bad, and they tanked. And for 70 games, they played well above everyone's expectations. They fought. They provided entertaining contests. They were fun to watch. They provided us great fantasy value. And now with 2 weeks left in the season, or less than 2 weeks left in the season, they've gone. It's actually in our best interests to try and maximize our lottery odds for, literally like 6 or 7 games. They're trying to do that because they tried really, really hard all season. Would you prefer that they just were uncompetitive all season? I don't see that there's any better way that a team that was going into rebuild, accumulating draft assets, building around young players, I don't know how better you could have done that. Like, there's no, I keep fighting out. Like, for what point at this point in the season? I don't think there's a better way of approaching this than what they did. What do you think about that, Arik?
I agree with you 100%. People think that a team can tank, and then suddenly become, an elite team. It doesn't work that way. You need to have the transition to be a team that's fighting for playoff, and like Indiana now, okay? And then when you see you don't get there, start tanking.
Yeah, and that's what they are. Like, if you ever look at like the Tankathon lottery odds, and I'm going to bring it up, I think they've got like the 5th at the moment. They're 7th, right, in the lottery odds, and they are half a game behind the Magic, who are actually keeping their guys together, and they've got the number 1 pick already. They've got Polo. They've got an extra potential lottery pick coming this season from the Bulls. They might end up with 2 top 10 picks. So if they win a couple of extra games because they're trying to see what they can do with this squad, they're fine. So they can easily drop down to an equal spot with the Blazers. Although they probably won't catch the Blazers because they're not winning another game, but they move into the 6th lottery spot, so they can easily then jump into the top 4, and then that's done. And they've won 33 games. Like, they've won double the amount of games than the Pistons, so they're not terrible. They are close to the play-in. They're like 5 games away. They're not going to get there. But to have a 33-44 record, which is what they currently are, so 5 more games, they end up 33-49. Not a terrible season. Teams have made the playoffs winning 37 games before, so that's not terrible. Yet they're still going to end up with maybe a top 5 pick. You couldn't have executed a tanking season, which wasn't really a tanking season, drew no ire from people. You got heaps of development into guys. I don't know how you could have done any better. And the same goes for Utah, who's at 36 wins, who could easily jump and get themselves a top 10 pick in this draft to go with a million other picks they've got coming in the future. I think it's a perfect way to do it. James Machucci. James, you know my opinion on this. What do you think about no longer having undroppable players come March? There have been multiple occasions where a player gets injured and it takes way too long for players to come undroppable. Yeah, you should never have an undroppable player list. There's zero reason for it. It's a stupid system to set up to begin with. If your league is in a situation where you're worried about players dropping players they shouldn't drop, get better league mates, get a better commissioner, or get the commissioner to reverse those. These things shouldn't exist. I hate having to wait for site providers to make decisions. It's like IL statuses. And, why isn't Yahoo doing this? Not my problem. Why aren't they making this position eligibility? Not my problem. Like, you can set it up so you don't have to wait for humans to do this, and there's certain discrepancies in time. You shouldn't have a can't cut list. Like, Damian Lillard should have been cut last week, but you couldn't do it until like Tuesday because you had to wait for this list to come through. Not only should you not have it in March, you shouldn't have it ever. There's no reason for it. Absolutely ludicrous thing that is standard in leagues, and you should never have it, James. Sorry to you, and apologies to you if that's how you feel about it, James, but you shouldn't have it. What do you think, Arik?
Again, I agree with you. That's why I hate to play in a league that you have vetoes. Okay, if there's a player that does such bad moves that you need to veto his moves, then go and find yourself a better league.
Yeah, like just or tell the guy, mate, like, what are these trades you're doing? Like, do you think any success is coming here? But you can't police every team's move in trades. I can't have it. Bradley Bryan. How do I make the case to my league mates that we need to get rid of positional requirements? And this is sort of just what I was talking about. And make all starting spots essentially flex spots. I'm pretty sure I've heard Josh talk about this before. I have spoken about it before. I'm not 100% in on every spot being utility, but I also don't think it's a bad idea. I hate the positional. Again, you're waiting. Why is this guy? Why is Embiid given power forward eligibility? That's ridiculous. Yeah, it is, because he's not a power forward and he never has been. So I have actually no problem with having flex spots. Again, so part of the problem, Bradley, with so many of these things, they're the things that default on fantasy forever. 3-pointers made is a default category, and it has been on fantasy since forever. Yet, what's the point of it? Like, half the shots in the league come from 3-point range now. Why do you get this extra bonus category for hitting them? But no one will ever take it out because that's what we're used to. Starting lineups with point guards and shooting guards, even though the NBA doesn't actually play like that anymore. They won't take it out because that's what people are used to, and that's what they've always had. So I think that having essentially, I don't see a downside to having all flex spots at all. I think people go, then people can stack up on one position. Oh, well, then you do something opposite. You go for other positions. It's not like they can grab more players than you. They can just add whatever positions they want. It just increases the strategy to me. Do you see a downside to that, Arik?
I think it makes the game a little bit easier to it's hard to me to explain myself now. There's something when you need to look at the positions, it makes it a little bit more challenging. But maybe I'm too conservative.
No, it does make it more challenging, and I've got no problem with things being more challenging. But my problem with something like that being more challenging is that you are relying upon somebody else making those designation changes. So you might draft someone who, like Jalen Williams, I believe, from the Thunder, wasn't a power forward eligible player for months, yet played power forward basically every single minute. So you're waiting for that up to, like, I'll grab him because he'll get power forward eligibility, and then he doesn't. Like, that's something that's you making the correct decision, knowing that this should happen, but then it doesn't happen for 2 months or whatever, and you're at the whims of someone else's poor decision making, which I just don't think is necessary. Like, why do I have to wait for someone to make that call to change someone's position or have that position eligibility? It makes it a bit more challenging, but I think it's an artificial challenge that really, your challenge should be your other team's waiver wire prowess, trade prowess, draft prowess, not the restrictions that a site puts on you in terms of which players are eligible at what spot.
Yeah, I agree that the positions are horrible. Sometimes there's nothing close to reality there.
Yeah, and there's all these legacy positions like Jokic sitting at power forward because one season he played 20 games starting next to Nurkic. Yeah. Like, okay, cool. Yeah. That happened 5 years ago. Like, it's not happening anymore. We don't need to worry about that sort of eligibility. All right, best Saturday ad, William asks. Hardaway? Yeah, maybe. Look, there's only obviously 4 games on Saturday, so we're down to a very small pool of players. You've got the Mavs, you've got the Pelicans, you've got the Clippers, and there is one other team that is escaping me. The other Saturday team is the Heat. So, yeah, Hardaway probably looms as one of the better ads there. You've got the Clippers guys. It could be Covington, could be Batum, could be Eric Gordon, could be Norman Powell. That is the second game of a back-to-back for the Clippers, so Kawhi might sit. The Pelicans with Josh Richardson, and the Heat probably Gabe Vincent, Kyle Lowry are probably your options there. So Hardaway's fine, but I wouldn't say he stands out necessarily, Arik, across or ahead of some of those other options for Saturday. Let's have James again. What's the best number of IR spots in fantasy? ESPN League I'm in has 1. Yahoo I am in has 3. How many do you think is a good number for IR/IL spots, Arik?
I prefer 1 IR spot. If it's normal league. In your league, it was something different, but in standard leagues, I prefer 1. I'm old school.
That is old school. If you want to go real old school, Yahoo used to have 0. Now they moved to 1. I think 3. Look, to me, my reasoning behind it is, it's unfair. Then you can sit on players. I don't know why that is. I don't agree that is unfair, because my point is that the fewer IR and IL spots that you have, that forces teams to get into situations where they have Kevin Durant out for 2 months, right? That they might be in a situation where they can't. If he's on the IR slot, then any other injury they have is cooked, and they might be like, well, he's out for 2 months, I might as well drop him. And the teams that can afford to pick up those players who can sit on injured guys are the teams that are in top 1-2 positions, and they can hold that guy, and then when they come back, they become unbeatable. So what it ends up doing to me is, when you have to make those hard decisions, who do you drop because your team is floundering, it means that the best teams get better, and it creates more talent disparity in a fantasy league. The more IL slots you have, I drafted this guy, I can hold on to him. So when he comes back, my team can get stronger and gets more into it, having a fighting chance against these good teams versus these teams that have put themselves clear above everyone else. And then they go, now the playoffs are here, and I've got Durant and someone else that's able to come back from an injury because I was able to sit on zeros and take some losses in week 15, 16, 17 because my position was so secure. So that's why I like to have the extra IL slots, because I just don't want to create that discrepancy where the only players who can pick up injured guys are the teams that are on top of the standings, which then puts them at a further advantage in the playoffs.
Yeah, but there's another side to that coin. First of all, it makes the waiver wire pretty dry.
It does. But you also find a lot of guys on the. There's also interesting waiver wire guys coming all the time, like Jalen Williams, Walker Kessler. These guys came off the waiver wire. There's plenty of those options. You're right that you can look at it and go, there's not much here, but there will still be guys that pop off the waiver wire, I find. I just rather not have good players appear on the waiver wire because they're out for 2 months. And then, it becomes a race to who adds them. And to me, just because the only teams adding them are the good teams, really. Let's be honest.
Okay, fair enough.
There you go. Hey, you guys, we all have our opinions. You asked what your opinion. I think 3. Definitely want 3. Arik thinks 1. James, you're in leagues with both. Which system do you prefer? Like, you're playing in one with 1 IR and you're playing in one with 3. So what do you think about that? Let me know. All right. I reckon we got one more question in us before we get out of here. Buzzer Beater says, do I prefer Kentavious Caldwell-Pope today or Tim Hardaway on Saturday for threes and steals? Well, I'll let you go first on this one, Arik. To me, there's a pretty easy answer there. But what do you think?
Okay, so if you need the steals, go with Pop. If you need the threes, go with Tim Hardaway. Pop now is pretty cold. He had a great stretch. He had a great stretch, but I think the better option now is Tim Hardaway Jr., although season long, Pop was much better option.
Yeah, look, he's very clearly been better all season, KCP. To me, the clear answer, now there's a lot of factors that come into this buzzer beater, which I don't know the answer to, but if I'm waiting to add Hardaway on Saturday, then I'm burning an opportunity to use somebody today. So why would I forego an opportunity to add a Pelicans player, Josh Richardson, Najee Marshall? I could, and say you've only got one waiver move back. Hardaway's fine, right? He might have 20 points. He might have 7 points on 12 shots. That's possible. But I could also add Josh Richardson and get 45 minutes of game action across Thursday and Saturday and get 25 points with 5 triples and 6 assists and 4 steals. I might not, but I know I've got a chance of doing that. So to me, if I can, or if you've got multiple moves, you add some on Thursday, you add some on Saturday. But I'm going to guess from this question you don't have that. Go with a 2-game guy. Go with a Pelicans player. Go Najee Marshall. Go one of those guys, because I just think having two bites at it when these guys, there's a chance that one of them pops off in a big way, especially if it is Richardson who's available. That's what I'd go for. But otherwise, if you've got the option to do both, you always want to go today, then add someone else on the other day. That to me would be the logical way to approach it. But in terms of who's playing better, at the moment, it's clearly Hardaway. Like, he's been better over the last week than KCP. That doesn't mean that it sticks for their next game coming up, though. So it is going to be an interesting thing for us to monitor. Arik, that'll send us out of here. So everyone can go and check out the DaytoDay Fantasy app, and anyone that we do have watching here in Israel, which I know there are people here watching it or want a Hebrew language fantasy podcast, go and check out the DaytoDay Fantasy Show. Thank you. Congratulations again, Arik, on winning the Locked On Fantasy Basketball. And
thank you very much.
Thank you for coming on here and chatting a little bit about your strategy and answering some questions. And good luck for whatever teams you've still got going for the rest of the season. Guys, that'll do it for me today. Follow this podcast on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Stitcher, Spotify, and on the Odyssey app. And if you are here on YouTube, you thumb it up and you leave your comments down below. Guys, we are done here. Thank you so much for listening, everyone. See ya.